What if the Peverell brothers created the Deathly Hallows for a greater reason than just defeating death? What if they wanted to protect and better all wizards in their time? What kind of impact would these objects then have on the greater wizarding world? And how would they attract a young Dumbledore or Grindelwald? Well, to answer that question, I think we have to look into why and how the Deathly Hallows were created. As for how, we all know the tale of the three brothers. Death greets three brothers on a lonely road at twilight. I mean midnight, Molly. No, don't. You know, Molly, I don't really care for Twilight either, but this seems like an overreaction. But the story goes that because these three brothers defied death, it then gifts them the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak. Or what's more likely is that the three Peverell brothers were very powerful wizards who created these objects, and the story just came to be as a moral one to teach kids not to pick fights or humiliate people when they're beaten. But the Peverells were real, and all legends do have some basis in fact. The Hallows actually proving this story true in this case, so how did they actually go about creating these objects? Well, to answer that, I think we have to look at a specific part of the legend that the one who would possess all three Hallows would become Master of Death. Now, if we accept that Dumbledore's point of view on this is true, that the Peverells were just powerful wizards, this line still has to come from somewhere. So I think it seems most likely that the Peverells did seek a way to defeat death, just not in the way the story seems to imply, that they're trying to become immortal or being able to come back from death. And when you consider that the Elder Wand has a thestral hair for its core, that the Resurrection Stone, no matter what theory you go off of, whether it's that it's a piece of the veil, which Harry and Luna can hear the same way that they're the only ones who can see the Thestrals among their group of six, and then there's the theory that it's like a Bezoar except with a Thestral instead of a goat, or that two wands dueled with Thestral hair cores, presumably the Elder Wand and its brother, and then the stone was given the powers of Priori and Cantatum. No matter which theory it is you believe in for that, it's still connected to the Thestrals for the stone, and then the cloak is presumably either made with Thestral hair or somehow given its power because the cloak seems to be able to work forever, and that's because Thestrals are secretly immortal creatures. You can click on the card up here to see why that is, but no matter what you look at with the Hallows, they're always very connected to the Thestrals and therefore death. Even more, though, why is this legend so important? I mean, Dumbledore and Grindelwald are two of the most powerful wizards ever, and what brings them together is this shared obsession of bringing together the Hallows so that they can use them to overthrow the Statute of Secrecy and rule over the Muggles. Because their goal isn't to overcome death, it's to rule the world and to be known as the masters of death so that the other wizards will see them as the ones who should lead, and then they can overthrow the Statute of Secrecy, rule over the Muggles, and, at no point is it that they're going to be the immortal rulers of the world. I mean, I don't think anybody would be surprised if Grindelwald made a Horcrux, and maybe if he was Master of the Elder Wand, that would make it completely indestructible. But that's never the goal. So the Peverells must have done something pretty important if it inspired Dumbledore and Grindelwald to think that they needed their Hallows to complete their goals. I mean, we know that the Peverells are on the Sacred 28 of pureblood families, but they must have done something even more important than creating the Deathly Hallows, something that would have shaped the wizarding world as we know it. But before they created the Hallows, something must have inspired them to do so, and I know I'm not the one who came up with the idea for this, but the idea is that the Mirror of Erised, the Veil in the Ministry, and the Pontiff at Hogwarts are kind of what inspired the brothers to create the Hallows. But I think it's the order in which they would be discovered that shows how the Peverells were able to create not only the Deathly Hallows, but the entire wizarding world as we know it. Obviously, the first of these objects to be discovered would be the Pontiff, and it would have been discovered long before the Peverells were even born because it was found by the founders of Hogwarts who built their school around it. And I don't know exactly when Ignotus would have learned of the object, but even if it was the first object that was found by any of the brothers. I could see it being one of those where it doesn't really fully hit him with the weight of how important it is until after he loses his brothers, and even then it just kind of haunts him for the rest of his life.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Some take this knowledge and try to be better for it. Others hide away just so that they can make sure the memory lives on. And oh god, I think I just made an argument that Ignotus is like Luke in the sequels. The next of these objects I think they would discover, or in this case possibly even create, would be the Mirror of Erised, which would then point them to their greatest desire, which I believe would point all three brothers actually to the Veil, or at the very least Thestrals, which again, the two I think are pretty synonymous. For Antioch, this is a pretty obvious one because again, the Elder Wand has a Thestral hair core, and we know that the Veil and Thestrals are connected because Harry and Luna are the only two who can hear the Veil in the Department of Mysteries and Order of the Phoenix, and again, they're the only two who can see the Thestrals. Can't anyone else hear it? Harry demanded, for the whispering and murmuring was becoming louder. Without really meaning to put it there, he found his foot was on the dais. I can hear them too, breathed Luna. Then we look at Cadmus, and again, no matter which theory you believe, whether it's Priorian Cantatum, a piece of the Veil itself, or the Bezoar one, it all points to the Veil, so that would be how Cadmus is pointed to the Veil as well. And again, with Ignotus, it would point to the Veil as well, because like I said before, the invisibility cloak would either be made of Thestral hair or somehow be getting its powers from Thestrals. And I'm sure you're wondering why I'm so certain that it's the Veil. All three of these show that it could just as easily be pointing to just Thestrals, and sure, I could argue that Thestrals actually come from the Veil, but the reason why I think it's specifically the Veil that it's pointing them to is because of where it's located. You know, it's in the middle of London, and then they build the Ministry of Magic around the Veil, just like the founders of Hogwarts built the school around the Pensieve. Because why else would you have the Ministry in London? It's a very highly populated city, and the biggest reason why the Ministry was founded in 1707 is to enforce the International Statute of Secrecy, which was passed 15 years earlier in 1692. If there's another reason why the Ministry is in London, I'm sure it's a very stupid one.
Not a great plan.
And yes, I hear you saying, well, Sirius tells the trio that they have a lot to learn about hiding, that they should hide in plain sight, and more people around makes you harder to hear, but like, at the same time, he's saying this as somebody who's been on the run for 2 years as the Ministry can't find him. I think we're giving the Ministry too much credit to think that they're smart enough to think like that. Really, it would make more sense to have it be in the middle of nowhere, like Hogwarts or Durmstrang, because nobody ever finds those, so I'm sure wizards could protect themselves in the middle of nowhere, but they choose to have the Ministry in the middle of London, so why?
Why?
Well, to answer that, I think we have to look at the Ministry's predecessor, and the British wizarding government before the Ministry of Magic was the Wizards' Council, which existed until 1707 when the Ministry was founded and was created sometime before 1269. And this is where everything comes together, because the Peverells were alive during the 13th century, so they would have discovered the Veil and then created the Wizards' Council around it, because that's where their government building is. It's built around the Veil in London, and there's no other reason why they would have it be in London unless they're doing that. And this is where they're able to complete their goals too, because they create the Deathly Hallows and then create the story of them being masters of death so that they can get all the wizards to unite and rally behind them, behind this story that these are the masters of death. They will protect us from the Muggles, and they can come together in a more organized way to escape persecution from the Muggles. So when the Mirror of Erised showed them the Veil, it didn't show them the Veil as a way for them to defeat death and become immortal. It showed them the Veil as a way for them to unite all wizards so that they could escape death by the Muggles. And a young Dumbledore and Grindelwald would hear their story and see the Peverells as the heroes of it, who sought to unite wizard kind so that they could protect themselves from the Muggles, and then it was all destroyed by the Statute of Secrecy, placing wizards in a subservient position to Muggles. So they would see the Deathly Hallows not as a way to defeat death, but as a way to finish what the Peverells started all those years ago. That they failed because two of them died so quickly after creating their Hallows, and that's why they weren't able to fully establish their vision and complete work that could defeat the Statute of Secrecy. That's what Dumbledore and Grindelwald want to do. They want to overthrow the wizarding governments as they know them and bring it back to a time when the Wizards Council would have ruled and the Peverells would have been trying to just protect every wizard from the Muggles. But the part that they miss in the story is that the one surviving brother, Ignotus, is the one who just wants to hide from death, which is what the Ministry wants to do. It's what wizards want to do with the Statute of Secrecy. They just want to hide from the Muggles, and that works for them for centuries, but it's not enough for Dumbledore and Grindelwald, who are much more like Antioch and Cadmus than they are Ignotus. I mean, they even view Ignotus's Hallow, the invisibility cloak, is just completing the set. It's not even useful to them otherwise, so they just completely miss the point of the story, which, sure, maybe the Ministry changed the story a little bit, made it more of a legend so that they could justify their existence, but at the same time, it is what works for the wizarding world. The Statute of Secrecy does protect them, and it is Ignotus's vision that survives, so even if Antioch and Cadmus wanted to rule over the Muggles, they die pretty quickly after they create their Hallows. It's Ignotus who wants to hide and just live his life. His vision is the one that leads to the wizarding world being able to survive for so many years. And one last point I want to make about the story not being about becoming immortal is that Voldemort never goes after the Deathly Hallows, and he goes further than any wizard ever to become immortal. That's what the 7 Horcruxes are about. If all he had to do was possess the wand, the stone, and the cloak, I'm sure he could have gotten his hands on them. You know, he even did possess the stone for a while and does possess the wand as well, so that's 2 out of 3 right there. I'm sure if his goal was to just get the invisibility cloak, he could have done that and become immortal that way, but that's not really what they do, so he has no interest in them. Because really, at the end of the day, what the story is really about is escaping death from the Muggles. That's what death represents. You know, wizards are being hunted at this time, and the Deathly Hallows are a way for wizards to unite so that they can hide and not be hunted by the Muggles. And that's how the Deathly Hallows led to the creation of the Ministry of Magic. But now I want to shift the question to you guys. Do you think Antioch and Cadmus had a different view for the wizarding government than Ignotus did? Or do you think that I'm diving a little too deep into the story here, maybe? You know, let me know down in the comments for that. If this video reaches, let's say, 15 likes, I'll make a video about the full life of the Peverell brothers, kind of based off this concept here, and you know, I think there's something there for it. Maybe a couple things I left out, but just on like the full life of the Peverells, let's say it is. But that's all I got for you guys today, so if you enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe if you want more like this, and I'll see you next time on STV.